There appear to be three players or protagonists, three dynamical systems in play as we make sense of the world. Mind operating through biologically generated noise is kept critical, waiting upon information supplied by the remaining two protagonists. These presenting implicitly and modulating explicitly, providing mind with the information it requires to support its intent in the world. These two takes on reality, or aware states, can't be fully integrated or reconciled because they enfold and emanate from a decohered signal. Mind modulates these complementary aware states in complex processes involving juxtaposition and not fusion. We can't engender the unity of the world from light. We have to generate and fabricate impressions of it in order to survive. The so-called deformations in visual art give us flashes of this perceptual structure at work. Mind understands the unity to best present that impression. So by default it understands the situation prior to decoherence, and that it is engaged and embedded within the fabrication. Mind tacitly understands all the relationships, including the micro-macro relationship, and hence the nature of quantum reality. That deeper understanding develops by proxy, but it's implicit within the phenomenon. This proposition with respect to the nature of experiential reality is approached here through intuitive record, charting visual phenomenal field, with only oblique references to the other sense ecologies. I'm also setting out this theoretical position without in-depth knowledge of dynamical systems. I don't have the math for one thing. The question is, does this experientially derived theoretical framework, requiring that we are driven by three distinct dynamical systems, actually overlay or provoke dialogue with research in this area? Cross-disciplinary dialogue can only improve collective insight. Vision space envisages that our perceptual system is brought to life on a prenatal basis, triggered by the onset of spontaneous phase-based activity in the form of retinal waves, feeding into deeper neural tissues. This early days activity calibrating the basic pathways, firing up our brain state or macro system, preparing the dynamical processes or microsystems that will serve it, together with a mesoscopic membrane through which they interface. I.e., there is a significant biological/evolutionary preset element to all of this, to set alongside the enormous learning component that goes on well into early adulthood. The primary data structure operational in vision strongly suggests that perceptual structure is underpinned by spontaneously generated phase space. Enfolded within internal biological noise, mind waits upon the external data being prepared for it by the remaining protagonists. Perceptual structure being then a standalone dynamical system, with mind in control of the principal attractor, but reliant on its interface with other systems, including the implicate and explicate takes on reality. With mind manifesting through a dynamical system associated with internally generated noise, it'll be that noise that runs the phase transitions governing the interface with the systems feeding into it, so we need to know more about its internal structural complexity. Why is noise so ubiquitous? Why and how does it take so many forms? Stochastic resonance would appear to be a prime candidate for a tool deployed in the interface with non-linear resonating noise input from the light array. This resulting in the manifestation of spatial values within the field potential of perceptual structure. The noise must contain implicit signal pertinent to the spatial arrangements within the scene. This implicit, subconscious form of awareness, unfolding directly from the light array, forming the basis of perceptual awareness that over time and with subsequent development leads to the self-organization of mind and the formation of consciousness. On a moment-to-moment basis, in our waking lives, the phase space of perceptual structure being guided by a kernel or attractor that sets the locus that unfolds the field, and hence the extents of the phenomenon. The formation of fixation then involves an attractor working together with the drawing of focus appreciable in macular vision. As such, there is no depth of field outside central vision, just as there is no information structure blur or motion blur. Vision is non-photographically rendered. A three-way relationship appears to be playing out between mind and the awareness centers reporting to it. I think these relationships should be considered as we seek to understand neural firing, the dynamical system and phase transitions that support and feed them. It may be possible to distinguish their features as we record encounters, whether that's through EEG or intuitive record at the macro scale, or via instrumentation, monitoring activity within neural populations, or even individual neurons on the micro scale. Relationship insights will also inform our considerations with respect to the all-important activities taking place at the mesoscopic level, where the micro and macro scales of operation interface with one another. Light, a free-moving microparticle, is bringing us, a macrobiological system, information about the macro environment we inhabit. Perception is going to be dealing with and be driven by factors relating to the macro-micro divide, fundamental to its formation. Investigations at the experiential level suggest some fundamental conditions that must be in place for the relationships to materialize. These, we suggest, are both currently impossible to verify, certainly by me, and also the primary cause for our inability to deal with the nature of reality, the workings of the brain, and our relationship with the real. Our approach, and hence the instrumentation we have developed, do not acknowledge these conditions. While it is obviously important to tackle them, the likelihood is that it will be through understanding the relationships in play that a viable methodology will become apparent, and not the other way round. By understanding what's involved in us being objective, incorporating the necessary subjective components where we form that local environment, we will finally understand how to approach observation at remote scales and develop the instrumentation required to confirm it. Implicit spatial awareness occurs to us, unfolding on a subconscious basis, this supporting an in-time, holistic form of spatial awareness, with its form of attention monitoring where we are in the world, or to be more precise, where the world is in relation to us. This take on reality is close to the Gibsonian position, but it requires us to generate the phase space through which to unfold the meaning. Within the resulting field structure, spatial movements are detected as anomalies that are then subsequently posted or presented by that system in the form of alerts to conscious attention. Around the attractor setting out the field structure manifests our explicit take on reality, temporal alignment between the two processes being mediated, not hardwired. The left-hand mug develops form over time. We contemplate objective form. Explicit awareness involves the modulation of detailed impressions of what is drawn into focus by control of the eye's physical lenses. This explicit process being entirely different in character to that unfolding as implicit spatial awareness. While the measurement of intensity-related events is unlike the passive phase-based resonating activity of its counterpart, it may also be controlled by dynamical systems, but operating in a hybrid mode. This explicit take on reality conforming to, and indeed analogous to, the so-called constructionist approach to the understanding of the phenomenon and so the nature of reality. Composition and mediation of the data formations governing explicit awareness appear to be highly organized and task-dependent, suggesting some functional independence but always working in close association with mind. In summary, mind governs our intent in the world, and so the tasks we undertake. In evolutionary terms, the explicit take on reality may be something that mind called for, making it essentially a creation of mind. It was willed into being. However, given that implicit spatial awareness presents in time, it's temporally in advance of our conscious, modulated, explicit, contemplated and considered take on reality that we have developed to conceptualize about the world. Consequently, the implicit can subconsciously inform or manipulate the direction mind takes, and can even rule its activities in the form of instinctive reactions. The closeness of the working relationship between mind and the explicit gives the impression that conscious awareness leads proceedings, even that it can work autonomously without contribution from implicit awareness. And let's face it, we refer to contextual awareness as peripheral. Think of it as a degraded form of central vision. There is something approaching an active rivalry between the implicate and explicate orders for the attention of mind, and this leads us to suggest that these two protagonists are indeed aware, with a voice of their own, if you like. At their interface with mind, they are active protagonists and not just the manifestation of some lifeless process, like components in a machine. Despite being passive by nature and often taken for granted by task-orientated activities, it's the implicit take on reality, the implicate order, that forms the basis of all awareness. This is a fundamental realization that some cultures are more aware of than others. If these relationships are indeed pertinent, interplay between the protagonists should leave distinguishable traces that can be attributed to functional aspects of awareness. We should also be able to distinguish at a micro level the pathways and perhaps even the processes that lead to their generation. So let's run the relationship model into unconsciousness and see what falls over. As we know, the ground state for the maintenance of biological functions can be kept operational under anaesthetic, while we are rendered unconscious. There are stages in this process, evidenced in phase transitions. Failures in phase transition decouple mind from both takes on reality and then from the body's internal reporting mechanism. At each phase transition, there would presumably be associated loss of awareness to stimuli, ability to carry out conceptual thought, general awareness to surroundings, then loss of awareness to internal systems such as pain. Go too far and the body's support systems would fail to coordinate and function. We should also be able to decipher at the micro scale the following: two independent processing streams with respective computational processes originating at the retina. These pathways ending in independent takes on reality are not functional aspects of perception per se. Within each take on reality, similar functional properties may emerge, but these will be realized in different ways and be bound up in the biases inherent in each system. It will be possible to derive some where faculty from the what pathways development of explicit awareness, and vice versa, but by entirely dissimilar processes. Spatial awareness in the implicate order is via egocentric proximity, entirely different to that derived from the explicate order, involving the conceptualization of depth. It's the specializations within each that mind is interested in, organizing their contribution to best advantage. We can expect that many perceptual realizations, similar in nature, are produced by both systems, even that they interact in compiling them. But while we may be able to ascribe the pathways similar functional characteristics, they nonetheless deliver quite distinct forms of awareness. The pathways are not defined by function alone, even priority of function. At the micro level, neurons will be observed performing differently, suggesting bespoke structures, or that they possess the ability to adapt under transformation, or perform specialist functions in support of one process or another, or that they possess the capability to stream data pertinent to both systems simultaneously, or under a fast alternating switching mechanism, or that they communicate by alternative means such as gap junctions. Unfortunately, as we know, there will be precious few signposts or labels hanging off them. The function, let alone the contribution they make to meaning, will not be coloured up for us. The reality is likely to be that at different stages in the pathways, different specialisms will apply to specific neuron types. This may go some way to explain why collective efforts working from the objective third-party ontology using instrumentation haven't already identified the duality behind the circuitry of neuronal firing in the brain, or even in the retina. As yet, the structure of the phenomenon, as encountered by visual artists on an experiential basis, has not been linked to the discovery of the two pathways using instrumentation. The results from instrumentation, however well posed, will not deliver meaning. From an experiential point of view, an area likely to provide a rich hunting ground in support of that agenda is the mesoscopic membrane, as it handles interactions between the macro scale of activity feeding down instructions and the microneuronal scale independently streaming the base sensory data up through the pathways. The pathways should be manifesting data from which the two takes on reality emerge. All the protagonists will be involved at the membrane. There should be clear differences between the respective processing activities and the related phase transitions, and it should be possible to associate these with functional aspects and even behavioral awareness. Mind is a playing conductor, but a section of the orchestra underpins its position. That part of the orchestra can change the beat, and the protagonist will follow. Little Oscar, sitting beneath the band, hammers out a different rhythm, ultimately engaging the soldiers on parade in a waltz with its audience. The implicit is not fully under mind's control, and never could be. In the case of atypical perceptual structures, where the operations of either of the two takes on reality are compromised, mind will not so much be inhibited as have the scope of its operations limited. The reality it generates will be compromised to varying degrees and subject to bottlenecking and inefficiencies as it struggles to compensate by developing alternative strategies. But we should also expect hyper-performance and savant-like abilities. If the relationship model alluded to here is pertinent, then we should be able to trace, using instrumentation, the differences between typical and atypical perceptual structures, and also evaluate the degree to which therapies can be used to encourage pathway development. We should also start to understand the inherent dangers in over-immersion in our information display technologies, and also over-reliance on our current data capture systems in research. All of this will involve resources dedicated to moving the vision-space programming architecture towards a generating output over merely illustrating experientially derived insights.